Hello everyone, welcome back. If you're new here, I am Molly and I do book content here on YouTube. And today I am with you to do a wrap up for June. I know I say this with every wrap up in TBR. I do not know where the time goes. It freaks me out. But there we go. I'm going to get straight into it because I have quite a lot of books to talk about. Because I have quite a few audiobooks mostly, as well as a few physical books. So, although one is a physical book that I read on audio, and I will talk about that one. I'm going to quickly just tell you the ones I didn't get to, because there are kind of a couple I'll explain. So one I definitely did not get to, and that was Alice Feeney's My Husband's Wife. And if you've seen my TBR for July, you know that I am carrying this over into July to read. Because it's also on my summer TBR, so I want to get this read. The next one is one I am currently reading but did not finish before filming this video, and that's The Juliet Code by Pepper Basham. I am over halfway through. I'm nearly finished actually. I've got just under, I'm trying to think, it's 315 I think. 315 pages and I'm on page 230, 231. So I don't have much to go, under 100 pages, so I'm hopefully going to finish this today, maybe? Either way, have not finished it, so I will add that onto my July wrap up. The next one is my non-fiction, How to Read a Book by Mortimer J. Adler and Charles Van Doren. This was a group read that Anne from In Search of Wonder was doing. I have not finished it in time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to continue reading it and I'll finish it in July. So those are the ones I am in the middle of and will be finishing in July / did not read in June. The rest of the books I have actually read, which is quite impressive because there are some big page counts. So I don't know how to do this because I have not updated my reading journal. So all of my everything's going to have to be from my memory, for starters. And then secondly, I've only got my little reading log in my bullet journal. So you're going to have to bear with me, guys. So I might start with the one that I've been reading for the longest time. And is technically first in my reading log. That's how long I've been reading it, guys. So I'll probably start with that. So one of the books was an extra book that I have been reading since, wait for it, October last year. Yeah. Not because it was difficult to read, I just wasn't prioritising it. That's the main thing here. And that was One by One by Ruth Ware. This was an ebook that I got. I think I got it from BookBub when they were doing offers or something. Either way, I got it cheaper. So, yeah, I've been reading this since October, on and off. So I wasn't reading it for long periods of time necessarily, apart from 1 or 2, 3 times throughout the nearly 1 year. Not quite yet, but nearly 1 year. So, yeah, I gave it a 4 star. So, One by One is a thriller. It's by Ruth Ware, obviously. A lot of you will have at least heard of her, even if you've not read her books. She is a mainstream secular thriller author, and this one was set, I don't know where. I want to say the French Alps, mainly because it's set in the snowy mountains, and there's French names and French speaking people. So that's where I'm getting the French Alps from. I honestly cannot remember if that is where it's set. So I apologise, but either way, it's a very wintry, snowy environment, and you're mainly following Erin, who is one of the staff who works at this house. I never know what you call them. I keep wanting to call them chateaux, but obviously they're not chateaux, because chateau is French for, like, a castle. So, obviously it's not a castle, but it's whatever, a chalet. It's called a chalet. See, I knew it began with a CH. Could I remember for the life of me what that was? No. Anyway, so she works at a chalet and with her friend and fellow colleague, Danny, and you've got her point of view as the worker, and then you get the point of view of this woman called Liz. And Liz is one of the people who come to the chalet for a holiday / business sort of thing as well. So there's this group of entrepreneurs, can't say that name or word, and they have a business that's kind of in the realm of like the Spotify sort of brand, but you can snoop on people. So you don't necessarily know who they are, apart from maybe celebrities, but you get to snoop on what they're listening to, so you know, and that includes what they're listening to currently, if they're online, or just in general what sort of music they like, and you can subscribe to people and they to you. And obviously you have normal people doing that. And so basically, the group who created this all go on a business holiday, where it's a holiday, but there's also a possibility of the company being bought out, and they're deciding what to do about it. And so whilst there, basically something goes wrong. An avalanche occurs. And basically, even before the avalanche occurs, one of the people goes missing. And then the avalanche happens. And then other things start happening whilst they are trapped in a chalet that has no Wi-Fi, no electricity, and no heating. So you've got a lot of things going wrong. Very classic thriller in that respect. And things start happening where people are starting to, let's say they don't go to sleep and don't wake up. And it's not necessarily as peaceful as all of that. So there's a lot of mystery going on, figuring out who the killer is, why people are missing. One person even walks out and doesn't come back, but doesn't explain themselves properly. So they're all wondering why, and also whether this person has survived and got to wherever they're going. So yeah, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of drama going on. There's a lot of secrets being kept by a lot of the characters. And yeah, it was really good. I did find that the premise was very predictable. There were twists and there were mildly kind of surprising things, but not really. Like something happens right at the end, so I can't really talk about it, but that I didn't really think about or expect necessarily, but when it occurred, I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So it wasn't surprising in that way, but I also wasn't expecting it. So it wasn't a difficult read for me in the whole figuring things out. It was very predictable. I figured out who the murderer was. Did I figure out why? Yeah, I sort of figured out why. It was very obvious, really. But yeah, I'd still give it 4 stars. I did think it was really entertaining. There was a lot of drama. It was very exciting and thrilling, like the genre suggests. So yeah, it was definitely really good. I just didn't think it was very difficult for me personally. So yes, if you like that sort of thing, you might like that. It's very not forced proximity, that's more romance genre, but that sort of thing, but in the thriller sort of genre where you're in an enclosed space, not really claustrophobic because, you know, it's a house, but that sort of thing. So, you know, there's no outside influences necessarily of other people, so, you know, it's very much figuring out who of this group of people is the murderer, stuff like that. I will say there is some content. There's a lot of swearing in this book from the get-go, especially from one character, but from everyone, really, pretty much, I think, anyway. And yeah, it actually almost made me DNF it, but it's the book started to get interesting, so I was like, oh, okay, actually, I'm normally okay with swearing, depending on how much it is. Okay is a bit of a stretch. I don't like it, but I just skim over it, like I switch the words out for something more appropriate for me personally. Stuff like that. I think they used Lord's name in vain as well, but again, I switched that out. Obviously, because it's a murder mystery and a thriller, there are, you know, some thrilling elements. There is murders, dead people described. I wouldn't say any of it was graphic, but I mean, you know what's gone on, so depending on how sensitive you are, you still might not like that. Yes, there's mentions of sexual stuff, but there is no sex, and there's no steamy or spicy scenes or situations. So one of the people, she is married and she's cheating on her husband. Then there's another couple who are mentioned are in a room together because everyone's knocking on, checking how they are, giving blankets because this happens when the heating goes out. So there's mentions of this woman in the room with this man. Obviously, we are to assume it's sexual reasons, but again, nothing is described, like no one's naked or anything like that. So there is that. And then there's also mentions right at the end, which I suspected of, but nothing was actually necessarily obvious. But one of the staff member, Danny, he is gay. There's no mentions of it, but throughout the book, especially right at the start, I had like a sort of like radar type thing, kind of going, I wonder if this guy is gay. But there's nothing necessarily obvious about it really. But yeah, you get that confirmed right at the end because there's mentions of this other guy that he flirted with to get a job, and there's also just, I think they're in a relationship. There's no mentions of that. He isn't in the relationship with that guy as far as we know throughout, like before the book starts, but right at the end it looks like that there probably was there was going to be a relationship. But again, it's just mentions of it. It's very, very brief. So there's nothing, I don't think anything untoward with that in terms of something you can't read, if you know what I mean. But obviously that's on you, that's up to you with that. But yeah, I enjoyed the book. It was 4 stars. I do wish there was less swearing, but it was good otherwise. Okay, the next one is actually a physical book this time. So this is a book, a non-fiction that I've been reading for a while, so I ended up finishing it in June, and that was The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. As the title suggests, this is a Christian non-fiction, a very famous one. A lot of people will have at least heard of it. And this is about, well, this is obviously a book version, so it is extended a little bit, but basically the author Lee Strobel, his wife becomes Christian, and because of that he, wants to know why, so he goes to research, the case for Christ, basically. And this book is basically his experience of doing that, him travelling to speak to different types of scholars. So you've got like theological scholars, you've got archaeologists, I think. Yeah, you even have people like a hockey player who became a Christian or grew up a Christian, I'm not sure. But you basically have different people who he interviews, and he asks various different questions, and it's all about the evidence of Christ being real, about his resurrection, all of that stuff. And it's really, really interesting because especially he also kind of ties in with a lot of them with different real life situations that he was also being a journalist for, because Lee Strobel was or is a journalist, so he used his skills in journalism to do this research, and it was just really, really interesting. A lot of it wasn't necessarily, so I don't know how well you can tell, I have a few bits dog-eared, so all of it was really interesting, but some particular bits were just really, really good, so I wanted to sort of indicate them so I could read them again. I didn't write anything much in it, but yeah. No, there's a lot of really interesting things, and I just really thoroughly enjoyed it. If you really like this sort of thing and you really enjoy it, this is definitely more for people who are maybe questioning their faith or are new to the faith, or even just who don't have a faith or are maybe agnostic. You might find this really, really good because it's very much logic and evidence-based. And yeah, I just really enjoyed it. It was a beautiful book. I can see why people talk about this book. It was really, really good. So yeah, I definitely recommend that. I've got a new mug, guys. if any of you know, there was a Prime Day deal, and this mug was on offer. I've been watching this mug for months, nearly a year, if not a year, and it finally went on sale, and I thought I have to get it because look, it's Scooby-Doo. I mean, I can't not get a Scooby-Doo mug, and it's a big mug. It's a 500ml one. I've definitely basically been using it since I got it. But there we go. And I'm definitely not wearing a Scooby-Doo t-shirt. It wasn't intentional for today. It was intentional for the other day, though. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, here we go. Okay. So the next book is one of my audiobooks that I listened to, and that was The First Salute by Barbara W. Tuchman. I don't know how you pronounce her name. Anyway, it's a non-fiction to do with the American Revolution in the 1770s. And it goes a little bit in the past before then as well, kind of like the lead-ups to it, as well as obviously the main war bit. And it was definitely very thorough. It's an adult non-fiction, so it was definitely very thorough. I did struggle to keep up with everything, mainly because I was listening to it on 2x speed. But yeah, because it's non-fiction, sometimes I do struggle with that as an audiobook. But I got enough of it, out of it. I do think, because I haven't really done any research on the American Revolution before, I think what I really should have done is prioritise maybe more non-fiction about it for younger readers, like children, basically. And I'll get to that in a minute, because I did read an ebook about that for kids. So yeah, but I did find it really interesting, because it sounds like it was very much similar to a world war, because obviously both the British and the Americans had their own countries supporting them through the war. So it was very similar to that in that respect. A lot of other countries were involved, so like I learned about, I think Holland was involved, and France. Obviously it wasn't mentioned in The First Salute, but again, another spoiler for another book. There were also, like the Irish who were involved, and the Scots, or Scots-Irish, as well as obviously, black people and people of colour as well, of course. But yes, so that was really interesting, and it was interesting hearing some quite famous families. At least to me, I assume they are ancestors of these families, unless I was mishearing. I am hard of hearing, so I could just be mishearing them. But I'm pretty sure it was mentioned that like an ancestor of the Clintons was involved in the war, which would make sense because the Clintons were, presidents in our modern days, or ish. So that was interesting, unless I was mishearing, which is very possible. I read a book once that I thought had a character named Thanos, and it wasn't called Thanos, so, just bear that in mind. Those of you who know more about it may be able to confirm whether I was hearing Clinton correctly. So it was definitely interesting, definitely very thorough. There was a lot of information. It wasn't graphic or anything like that, because it's a non-fiction. It's not quite the same as a fictional story. But yeah, I gave it a 3.5 because it's really interesting. Yeah, and I would say that's a really good rating. It wasn't a bad book. So yeah, I definitely thought it was interesting. It was a good read. And then the next book is another physical. And that physical is As Sure as the Dawn by Francine Rivers. I know, I finally did it. Because this is a thick book. I think this took me about 2 weeks to read. When did I finish it? You can figure out the maths. I'll tell you the dates. So I started it on the 31st of May, so last day of May. Finished it on the 14th, so yeah, that was basically 2 weeks, for 14th of June. So yeah, it took me a while to get through it. It's a thick book, guys. It's like nearly 500 pages. I mean, it's ridiculous. 473 pages. is a thick book. I love this book. I gave it 5 stars. I was going to give it 4, but then the ending, that last third of it when they reached Germania, so good. So, slightly spoilery, but kind of not really. This is book 3 in the Mark of the Lion trilogy. It's Christian, ancient historical fiction, and as I'm sure you can tell by the cover, this mainly follows Atreides, who is the gladiator we meet in book 1 of Voice in the Wind. And this basically carries on from the ending of book 1. So you get a little bit of a previously in the Mark of the Lion series sort of prologue where you go back to him meeting Hadassah. And so, yeah. Yeah, I didn't continue that because I realised that was kind of spoilery. But basically it follows on from the end of book 1 and carries on for him as like book 2, if you know what I mean. So it like coincides with the timeline of book 2 kind of. I mean, you don't know when in like I couldn't compare it to book 2, if you know what I mean. Like, oh, this happened when this was happening in book 2 sort of thing. Like I couldn't do that. But obviously because it starts where book 1 left off, it kind of carries on from there, if you know what I mean. And this follows Atreides for a few years-ish. I'm not quite sure, but certainly multiple years. And then obviously you get the whole ending bit, which is multiple years by then. But for like the actual main story, it's a few years. And it follows him and a woman called Rizpah, who ends up being connected to him through something that happens in book 1. You'll have to read book 1 to find out if you don't know what that connection is. So yeah, and it basically follows them basically getting to know each other, trusting each other, stuff like that, as well as eventually trying to get to Germania, which is where Atreides is from. He's German, and basically to kind of stay there, basically. And it's again because it's Christian, Atreides isn't a Christian for a lot of this book. So Francine Rivers, as a lot of people who read her books know, she definitely kind of shows that, but I find in a good, not in a good way, but like in a way that isn't inappropriate for me to read personally. Now obviously we all have different boundaries and preferences and how sensitive we are, so obviously each to their own with that one. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I did find it was very slow. I mean, it's a big book, but I think part of the reason for that is because I'm kind of more in the mood for a faster paced book at the moment. A book that has a lot going on, or at the very least is shorter if it is a bit slower. Because yeah, that's just kind of the mood I'm in. I was in a little bit of a slump a couple of months ago, 3 months ago, something like that. So I definitely feel I'm better from that now, but I'm still kind of in that kind of vibe of wanting something a bit more in a book. And this did have that in it, but not that much. It's very much more of a character study and about their travels. So it was a really good book. I really enjoyed it. Was like, it's still a 5-star, or would have been a 4-star if it wasn't for the ending. So it was still really good ratings otherwise. But there were bits where I'm like, I think that could have really been a bit shorter. But I also understand why it wasn't, because it's still important in terms of, you know, the journey of Atreides' faith and the strengthening of Rizpah's faith, and the characters between getting to know everyone and stuff like that, and the strong love and friendship between all of the characters. So I do understand why, but I just wasn't in the right headspace, so it took me 2 weeks to read. But I really love it. I love the ending especially, because obviously, as like with the other books, it all works out. We all love that, don't we? If you like reading about young kids, there's some lovely content with just seeing a young kid grow up and just having fun as well, and just being an absolute delight and adorable. So if you like that stuff, you get quite a bit of that in this as well. There were definitely some funny parts as well, obviously emotional. So because it's Francine Rivers, most of you know she does toe the line between what people, depending on who you are, what stuff you like. So obviously be aware of content stuff. There is a couple of instances where Treaties, before he becomes Christian, kind of non-consensually tries to kind of kiss Rizpah and stuff like that. Nothing is described, nothing actually ends up happening any further, if you know what I mean. But obviously, if you're sensitive to that, just be aware of that. There's anger issues from him as well. So he struggles with anger, so just be aware of that if that is something you're a bit sensitive to. I'm trying to think, anything else. There's spiritual warfare in the last third of the book, so do be aware of that. There is magic, like kind of like real life sort of paganism magic sort of thing from like, you know, idol worshippers and stuff like that. It's portrayed negatively. But be aware of that. So there is spiritual warfare in that respect. So do be aware of that. Actually, all of that was my favourite part, which isn't surprising really. Not because I like, you know, the whole paganism thing. It's more that, you know, the whole good winning over evil sort of stuff. You know, and it's kind of more exciting, if you know what I mean. But yeah, it was just another really powerful book by Francine Rivers. Actually, as I'm speaking, I have seen an Instagram post from Tyndale, the Christian publishing house, that has Francine Rivers talking about a new book. And I'm like, yes. So, yeah, I love Francine Rivers' books. I've only read about 4 of her books. And hands down favourite author. If you love strong Christian fiction with a lot of faith content in it, you will love her books. Even though most of her books are very heavy going, she does tackle some heavy subjects, and obviously most of her books are absolutely gigantic. So, you know, she won't be for everyone, but if you do love strong faith content, I recommend all of her books. Even though I've never read any, I've only read 4 of them. But there we go. Yeah, absolutely love this book. I cried. I didn't even cry. I sobbed. I was up till like 4 in the morning. That's to finish the book. That's yeah. Love her books. Okay. The next one is another audiobook, and that is The Schoolmaster's Daughter by John Smolens. And this is a historical fiction set again in the during the American Revolution. This is mainly set in Boston, if I remember correctly. And as the title suggests, this is about the daughter of a schoolmaster in that area. And her and her family have different points of view. So her dad is very royalist, and she is very patriotic and very much for the revolution, as well as her and her 2 brothers as well. And maybe even her mum, but that one's a bit, who knows, sort of thing. And basically it's just about her, and it's about spies. It's about, you know, it's a historical book. It's about that era. So you've got all of that secrecy stuff, finding out about the wars, bit of battles, subterfuge, or I think, if I'm getting that right word correctly. Typical reader, know the word. Do I know the definition out of context? No. So I apologise if it is the wrong word, because I haven't looked it up right now. So yes, it was good. I gave it 4 stars. It was definitely good. It was interesting. I found it really interesting seeing how a whole family can have such opposing views, and seeing that dynamic. That was really interesting. Because of that, and the struggles with that, and how to act within your community because you have different beliefs, and kind of hiding them, because obviously, you know, she still loves her father, you know, still respects him in different ways and stuff like that. So it's very, I can see the complicated feelings for the characters because of things like that. So it was a really good read. It was really interesting. When I first saw it, I recognised the title, and I wasn't sure if it's because I heard of that specific book, or I heard of a different book with the same name, which obviously is very common. Because I thought I might have heard of that book through Christian BookTube. That doesn't necessarily mean it was necessarily a Christian book anyway, but certainly appropriate. But I wasn't 100% sure, so I went into it not knowing how clean it would be. And yeah, so it's mostly clean. It's historical, so there's no swearing, but there's a couple of things. So there's definitely some sets outside of marriage. I wouldn't quite call them open door scenes. They were more just maybe cracked door. I've heard that phrase recently, where it's kind of not particularly spicy or steamy, should I say. But there's certainly slight lead up, and then obviously you are led to believe that stuff like that has happened. And that you hear that a couple of times, and there were basically at times when I couldn't skip. And I'm always scared with audio of skipping, because what I don't want to do is end up going too far and then not knowing what's going on. So I kind of had to force myself to listen to them, and I wish they weren't there. I wasn't expecting them. And then as soon as it started happening, I was like, ooh, why are you doing this? No. So anyway. So be aware of that with this particular book by John Smolens. I wouldn't quite call it clean. Depending on your preferences, you personally might still be okay with it, or skipping it. If you're reading it physically or on an ebook, you could just very easily just skip it. So yeah, it wasn't as bad as a properly steamy, spicy book, but just be aware of that. I didn't really like that. There's also one character who does get told off about it, a male character who is very, very crude. Basically, he is talking to the main character, her younger brother, about sets, because he's basically asking him if he has, a girl back home sort of thing, and he's like, oh well, yeah. And so basically this guy ends up being really, really rude in terms of the sexual it wasn't even a conversation, because it was only him talking about it, but he's just being very, very crude about sex outside of marriage again, basically. And so that was very brief. He did get told off by a different male character. So yeah, that wasn't very nice. But that one, to be honest, felt more open door scene than the actual allusions to set scenes. So anyway, he gets told off, and there was only that one time, but there are also mentions of prostitutes, and obviously the things that prostitutes do, or sex workers, whatever you want to call them, it's all the same thing. Yeah, so there are mentions of those, and you don't get any actual scenes about anyone being with any sex workers. There's one instance where a character is hiding with a sex worker that he knows, and there's mentions of one or the other ones being asleep, because I think it was him and someone else. But there's nothing, again, no actual sex, there was no actual nakedness described of the sleeping woman, so just be aware of that. But again, there's nothing actually on page with that either, or well, it's on audio, but you know what I mean. So I wouldn't really recommend it. I kind of wish I didn't read it and chose something else, but it was basically free on Audible, so I was like, that'll do. So, and I didn't know anything about it, but there we go. Outside of those things, it was really interesting. Oh, there's also an allusion to sex outside marriage and pregnancy because of them twice. One of them is not the main character. That's just me spoiling it. But basically, there's two allusions to that as well. So, yeah, it's a very worldly book. I'm not saying it never happened in those days. It will have done. But anyway, it wasn't great. But the story overall, in terms of the historical history bit and the wars and stuff, really interesting. And so, some people will like that book and then others won't. and I personally wouldn't necessarily recommend it. Okay, the next book is the one that I said well, it's not complicated, but basically it's this book, The Librarians of Rue de Picardie, by Janet Skesley and Charles. I apologise for all of the mispronunciations of both the French place and the woman's name. Those of you who will know this author probably more for the Paris Library. This is a World War One dual timeline fiction. It's basically set in 1918 and then also in 1987. So technically in the past, but I would call it more the contemporary timeline, because it is still in our modern day. I mean, it's 1987. It's not long before I'm born. So anyway, I actually listened to this on audio because I was never going to read all my books if I didn't do something like that, and I was able to get it for free on my Spotify because I paid for it, so I was able to listen to this on my Spotify, which is great. Really helped, and it was good. I enjoyed this better than the other one that I read. This was a borrow from a friend from church, and she recommended it. It's based on fact, so it's based on an actual so it's based on an actual woman called Jessie Carson from the 1918 timeline, who was a librarian during that time, an American one who ends up going to France to basically help the library there and help the French community, local communities near that library. She does things like she ends up doing like story time, she did like mobile libraries, stuff like that. She did a lot of really good work. And in the 1987 timeline, another American librarian from the same library that Jessie Carson worked at when she was in America, basically finds something about Jessie Carson. Yes, she finds a reference to this librarian and basically goes to do some research on her, basically, and tries to find her and find what happens to her, because she just disappears, basically. And so you mostly get the 1918 timeline, but you do get bits from 1987 as well. It was really good. It definitely wasn't as difficult to read as a different book that I read that was set in World War II. Because that one was a lot more heavy going. I can't remember what that one was called. Again, it was book related. Anyway, I like this one because you're not getting as much of any occupied situations. You're not getting as much of the war stuff. You get a little bit of it and a little bit of the bombing stuff, or like the threat of being bombed, stuff like that. But you get hardly anything of that. So that I really enjoyed that because of that. Because I find it can be really heavy going, and I don't mind heavy going subjects, especially important ones like things like about the world wars or anything else. But I'm quite a sensitive person. It doesn't take much for me to get emotional with things. So yeah, I'm not always in the mood for something like that. So this was very much more along the lines of what I can handle. I'd enjoy it. It's very bookish. You get lots of references to some of the classic books like Anne of Green Gables and The Secret Garden, as well as some other books. You get a lot of really sweet moments with or about children, and, teaching, helping them enjoy reading and get some joy in their life whilst going through some really horrible situations, and especially in particular in France. You also get a little bit of a relationship in both timelines with both of the main women, which is nice as well. I would say this isn't completely clean either in that respect with the relationships. There are technically three, but one in the second timeline, in the more recent one, the male tries consensually, they both want to, but then she decides not to, so they don't. Because of something that happened in her past. But then eventually she feels comfortable enough and they do have sex. It's not graphic, but it's graphic enough. Like there's no descriptions, but you get some of the things that they're saying. The second timeline is less graphic than that, but you still know what's going on. And again, it's not really a described scene, it's more kind of like a cracked door or a closed door or whatever. So just be aware of that. I wouldn't say they're completely clean, but otherwise, I don't remember there being any swearing. It's hard. I don't know the author. I don't know if this author is a Christian. Those of you who know her books might be able to tell me if she is, because you do get kind of some faith in the previous timeline in 1918, but it seems to me more because of it being in 1918, not necessarily like Christian fiction. So you don't get the whole Christian fiction faith, but you do get bits of it, like mentions of going to church, mentions of praying, stuff like that. But I wouldn't really call it faith-based. So just be aware of that. Also, there is an allusion to a possible same-sex relationship in the 1918 timeline between two of the other women, not the main character. It's not obvious and it's not confirmed, but there's an allusion to it where when you're reading it or listening to it, you're like, you know, like even the character talking about it kind of gives you that feeling that there might be more going on behind the scenes, but obviously because it's 1918, very hidden, probably illegal, although they're women, so I think they might not have been, they would have still been hiding, but might have been less of an issue because people initially thought it was only men. So I don't know, but either way, it was very hidden. It was very brief, one mention, and that was it. So, and there's nothing like that mentioned in the contemporary timeline in 87. So yeah, not that there were worse, probably less clean books than this. So if you like this author, you might like this book, unless you don't like that there's not much information, stuff like that, on like the actual like wars and stuff like that. But yeah, it was really good. Emotional still, obviously, just not as bad with that one, which I appreciated. I really did. Okay, the next one is another non-fiction, and that was an ebook, and that was the Captivating History, The American Revolution for Kids by Captivating History, and that, as I'm sure you can tell, is a children's non-fiction about the American Revolution. I'm sure you can tell by the title. And this I got more out of than I think any of the other non-fictions, apart from a later one, but that one is for a different reason. It was really good. I was reading, well, it's an ebook, so not physically, but I was reading it with my eyes, so I found it a lot more beneficial in learning more about the American Revolution, and also because it's for kids, it's a lot more basic. You get the facts that you're looking for when you're doing research, you know. You get dates, you get, you know, the people, the battles, stuff like that. It's only a short book, so it doesn't go in depth, but it's brilliant for kids, obviously. But also, even if you're an adult, I would say, if you can handle the kind of childlike, not childlike way of writing, but it's written for kids, so it is written in that way, if you know what I mean. Those of you who have been around kids or have kids and have read books like that, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. So it was really good though. I learned a lot from it. I've read a lot of this stuff this month in June, so I'm not necessarily remembering everything, because also my videos are long, so I don't want to take ages talking about all of these, and a lot of it will be just repeated. But it was really good. It had pictures, it had also, after pretty much almost every chapter, there's also a little activity, just rehashing and just drumming in again the stuff that you've read in that chapter, which is really useful if you're a child or you're doing school, like, you know, or like learning stuff at home or whatever. which is really great. And yeah, you get a lot of kind of basic things, like you get some of the really important figures during the revolution, some of the really big battles. It also briefly goes into slavery as well. I wasn't quite sure why, but it wasn't very long, so it's fine, because it was a thing back then, so that's probably why, because you kind of can't really go through it without mentioning it, so that's probably why it was talked about a little bit. And yes, it was really interesting. Yeah, I can't really think what else to say, because I'm not remembering everything, guys. It's a lot of information at once, and it was a little while ago when I finished it. But yeah, it talks about George Washington, and it mentions how, you know, things like the cherry tree thing, and how, the author mentioned how it might not necessarily, they don't quite say it like that, but they basically imply that it might have been a made-up story just to kind of add to the whole George Washington sort of thing. But you do get mentions of George III as well, so you do get a little bit about the British side of things and the reasons why, you know, the US was being taxed. Well, the US colonies were being taxed a lot, and the different taxes that were going on. Because what you always hear about is obviously the tea tax, which, you know, is only a part of the reason why, you know, the American Revolution happened. There was actually other taxes as well on top of all of that. So that was interesting, and it was interesting learning that a lot of the reason why is, well, no, I can't describe that well, but it was interesting to hear that in Britain it was mainly the Parliament doing all of these taxes, and obviously the King does have his place, you know, he, you know, signs off on these things and all of that. But it was interesting how a lot of the doubling down on taxing the American colonies is because of the Parliament, not necessarily King George, although he also had his issues. I'm not saying he didn't, but it was just interesting how it was, sounds like it was mostly Parliament because of that, being the main culprit sort of thing. So yeah, it was really interesting. I think it's a great book for kids, and it's just a whole series as well of different times. So because I've read that book, I've been, you know, shown other ones by Captivating History. They've done one on, what's the one that I'm thinking of? I can't remember. But anyway, really good, really useful, and has some activities for the kids, which is great. And yeah, I definitely recommend it. This next book, I'm really excited to talk about. So this next book has been a long time coming. I have filmed a reading vlog for it. I've not, as I'm filming this, I've not edited it or uploaded it yet, but I will be. And because of that, I'm sure you can guess what the book is. Took me a minute then. And that is Ariadne and the Legend of the Fire Rose by Christy A. Cole. And Christy A. Cole is a fellow Christian booktuber here on BookTube. I'll be linking her down below because I'm talking about her book. And if you weren't aware, I have decided, even though I am in the second half of the year and have not even barely started this series on YouTube, I have decided to do like a series on YouTube where I do reading vlog for Christian books that I'm reading that have been written by Christian booktubers. And Christy A. Cole, obviously, like I said, is one of them, and this was my first book. They're not in any particular order. So, keep an eye out for that vlog. So let's get into the book. So, as I'm sure you can tell, it's a fantasy. It's YA. The main character is 15 turns 16 in this book, and I love this book so much. I read this, okay, for me, I read it quickly. Other people maybe not, but I'm a slow reader. So, this book is about Ariadne, And when she's about 11 or 12, which is like the first 1 or 2 chapters, she ends up, for some reason, we don't know why, she is travelling with her parents to some place she doesn't know. And basically, they get attacked by a creature, and she is told by her mum the directions to go to a safe place, and is given this bag that has a necklace in it. And so she runs and, gets saved and goes to this gate and basically, goes into this safe haven. And this haven is like a orphanage school style of building, and they called it something manor. I'm terrible with these things. No, she doesn't. Okay, well, there's a manor and it's called something manor. I can't remember what it's called now. I'm an absolutely terrible reviewer, evidently. Especially for saying that I love the book. Anyway, this manor, she basically goes and, she tells them what's happened, and a couple of people go out to search for her parents but can't find them. And so basically 4 years pass, and we see her again at 15, and she's been in this school for that long. She's part of the society. She's part of this big group of girls. You don't really know how big, but it sounds like a pretty big group of girls. Very school-esque in that way, where there's quite a lot of them. They're all different ages. I think from what I can guess, they're probably between the ages of like 11-ish up to maybe 18, something like that. I could be wrong. That's just the vibe I'm getting. Again, I could be wrong. And basically, she's grown up with them. She's been, doing all her lessons, different things like that. But with all those lessons, she and all the other girls are learning different things to do with weapons. Fighting, things like that. Very, very strange. Very, very cool. And and you do get a lot of that in this book. A lot of them doing training and stuff like that. And basically there's quite a few mysteries going on. Some you don't find out, I think. Some you do. And anyway, and yeah, I'm trying not to say very much because I just want you to read this book, because I think Christie is a fantastic author. Throughout reading this book, it was like reading a comfort film. And I say reading a comfort film, it does not make sense. But what I mean by that is, when you have a comfort film. So for me, it makes me think of The Princess Bride. And it's such a comforting film. It's very light-hearted, full of action and adventure, a little bit of romance. It's just a very comforting film. And Christie's writing makes me feel that same way. I feel like I'm all cozy, like I feel comforted. As I've been saying, it was just really refreshing. Even though it's not refreshing necessarily in the way of different, it felt refreshing, like you're having a drink of water when you're thirsty. Like, water isn't a new thing, but, it refreshes you. It's very, it's water. So, yeah, that was kind of the vibe I got. It's how I felt reading this book. I just loved it. It's YA. You've got your YA themes. You've got some bullying. You've got budding romance between the main character and a young lad from the village nearby. You get another mysterious lad who may or may not become a love interest. We don't know. So a possible love triangle there. But you get a lot of mystery. You get a lot of fantasy elements, but kind of not magical in the same way as you would say Harry Potter is. It's more magical in terms of effects from good and evil. So you have a magical element with, as I'm sure you can tell by the title, and it also says it on the blurb, of this fire rose. And it's a rose that, kind of like the burning bush, it's on fire but it's not burning, if you know what I mean. So it's very much like that. And there's a lot of allegory because of that rose. Christie, the allegory. I absolutely love the allegory. It's Christian fantasy YA fiction, okay? The allegory. I love the allegory. The allegory with the fireworks. I don't want to say too much because, oh my goodness. So, like, you get allegory of, like, the Holy Spirit. You get allegory of the gifts of the Spirit. You get allegory of course, you know, Satan. And, you know, like, not necessarily Bible stories. From what I can remember, none of them reminded me of any actual Bible stories. But they were definitely that sort of thing. Where you get the whole, like, legend or sort of stories about the evil stuff of a dragon. So, yeah, it was really, really good. I loved the allegory. And there was another allegory, not really an allegory, but there was a situation right near the end. There's a big reveal. Not going to say much about that, but what the character talks about when she's doing her speech, and Christy will know what I mean, and those of you who have read it will know what I mean. That speech that this character gives right near the end, it doesn't remind me, but those of you who know the things that Jesus has said will read that and go, that is the thing that I've read in the Bible. And I'm like, oh, it made me cry. I loved it. Christy, I need book 2. I want book 2. I love this book. I really, really do. I gave it 5 stars, I think. Yes, I gave it 5 stars. Oh, it's just so good. If you can get past the YA, I really recommend this book if you like fantasy. Because the Christian allegory is not necessarily obvious unless you know, Christianity stuff. Faith. Stuff like that. Like, it's not obvious. Like, I could definitely recommend this to someone who isn't a Christian, and they would not necessarily get it unless they were, like, knowledgeable on that stuff or something. But, yeah, I really love it. There's mysteries, there's reveals. And did I spoil myself for one really, really big reveal? Yes, I did. I do it too often. So I was looking at the page numbers because I wanted to know how much I had left. I do it with all my books. Some people do it because they're like bored and they want to know when they're finished. I do it because I like to know how far I am. Not because of boredom, but because I just like knowing. And so I did that. And Christy, you know this because you've written it. I read that last sentence. It's a pretty big reveal, that last sentence in the book. And I was like, why did you do that, Molly? Why did you do that? I was like, typical, honestly. So, yeah, I spoiled myself with the last sentence, but it's fine. It's fine. Is it something completely out of the blue that I never would have guessed? No. But I still didn't need to know yet. Anyway, that's on me, okay? That's on me. That's my own fault. I love this book. I recommend it. I love Christy. She's not always uploading like every week or anything, but she'll still upload reasonably regularly every so often. So I definitely recommend her channel as well. Especially if you do like your fantasy. This is very much fairy tale-esque fantasy. So it's not based on fairy tale, like it's not a retelling. But I think that's why it felt comforting. Sorry, I'm going back to the whole it feels like a warm hug, comfort read sort of thing. It definitely has that sort of fairy tale vibe where that a lot of people would feel that way with the fairy tale. Not everyone, of course, it's your personal opinion. But like, if you like fairy tales and that's how they make you feel, that's the same vibe I get with this book. I absolutely love it. Oh, it's like a warm hug. I love this so much. It's such a good book. And the romance is so sweet. And then there's like some sweet little kids too. And I'm just like, oh, why? Why are you so cute? I love it, okay? Can you tell I love the book? No, I can't either. Alright. The next one is my last non-fiction of the month, technically. Well, it's not technically. It is the last one. Anyway, so this next book is again to do with the American Revolution. And this book is called How the Irish Won the American Revolution by Philip Thomas Tucker, PhD. And I did not think to put down the rating. I have done it already on my Instagram, but do I remember what I put? No. I think it was 3.5. Really good rating. It's a non-fiction. It's unusual that I give really, really high stars to them. It depends. It depends on the book, like with all books. Anyway, so as the title suggests, this is about American Revolution, but from the perspective of Irish and Scotch-Irish people and ancestors. Sorry, the sun's... It's that time of the day I get the sun in the evening. So I apologise for the lighting and the fact that I'm now half bright and half in shadow. There you go, I'll just lean back a little bit. So yes, this book again was really interesting. Again, it was free on Audible, pretty much all of the books that I have read for the American Revolution are probably more not necessarily obscure, but they were all free or on Kindle Unlimited. Like the kids one was on Kindle Unlimited. If you have that might interest you. And then, you know, the other audiobooks are all free, other than paying for Audible, but you know what I mean. And that includes how the Irish won the revolution. And it's definitely really interesting. You get a lot of the Irish history. You get mentions of, obviously, the persecution of the Irish from us British again, and them, you know, moving to America, and kind of how they've kind of been wiped out of the American Revolutionary stories because there was a lot of them involved with this. Apparently there was even some who were quite close to George Washington, apparently, and stuff like that. Some of them were quite prominent in the armies and stuff like that. There was even mention, for definite, one woman, maybe a couple, who weren't necessarily in the army, but, you know, involved. Courage in Petticoats, like the prompt is for the Red, White and June Readathon that I participated in. I'll be talking about all that stuff after. And yes, it was very interesting. It definitely went through a lot of the history of it, basically. I would say... Yeah, it was definitely interesting. It's one of the, again, it's an adult non-fiction, so there's a lot of information. So I'm not always remembering everything. But it was definitely very interesting. And it was an audiobook, so obviously I missed things with my hard of hearing ears. But yes, it was very interesting. I enjoyed it, I guess. I wouldn't quite say I enjoyed it like I would a fiction, but you know what I mean. It was certainly interesting. And yes, I'm trying to think. There wasn't really anyone that I recognised the names of, which makes sense. But it was, you know, rather than like George Washington, you know, people like that. But in terms of like actual Irish people, I didn't. But it was definitely interesting. I think there were even mentions of... I don't know, but anyway, it was interesting. If you're someone who is really interested in that, or you're Irish or of Irish descent yourself, and you're interested in that, or you're in America, or you're American, you know, an Irish American, then you might find this book especially interesting. I know I found it interesting. I think I gave it 3.5. I will write it down when I'm editing whether I agree or whether it's, and if not, what the actual rating was, because I can't remember. But there we go. So that's my last non-fiction. The last book I read of the month is another fantastic book. No one is surprised by this. It's a very popular book at the moment. Those of you who know will probably know what book it is. Before I even mention it, I finally read it, guys. Wormwood Abbey by Christina Bear. Even with reading the Little Women series, I still don't know how to pronounce this name. This is The Secret of Ormdale, book 1, and this is a Christian historical fantasy. it's definitely more historical than fantasy. The fantasy element is mainly the dragons and the main character's relation to the dragons. So yeah, this is basically about this young woman. She's 21, so you know, young woman, and her parents and younger brother. They live in England. I don't know where. And I don't know where she lives, but basically her father's relatives have passed away. They live up in Yorkshire in the north, and basically because they died, and because it was his brother and nephew, his brother's son, both passed away, and they've only left daughters, basically, slash the son's sisters. So basically there's no one but her father to take over the abbey, basically. And so they go up there to try and sort things out, you know, sort out the will and try and put the house into the girl's name, the eldest daughter of his brother. And basically it all goes from there. It's kind of slice of lifey. It's very short, but even though it's slice of lifey, it has a lot of intrigue in it, a lot of mystery, because, and obviously a lot of newness, because Edith, the main character, she's never met any of this family. They're estranged because her father married her mother and his family didn't like that. So although the mother in this is actually her stepmom, because her mum passes away before the book starts. Not really a spoiler. So yeah, basically it's about all of that and the mystery surrounding it. She meets a little lizard in the fire. Definitely don't know what that lizard is. No. By the way, it is all implied on the blurb. And also it's so famous. Well, not famous. It's so popular. You guys probably have all heard of it. And know about the dragons. So, there's a lot of really, really interesting mystery. I'm trying to think, was any of it surprising? There were definitely some surprising bits. Definitely bits I didn't quite get. There were definitely some suspicious behaviour from people. Definitely someone I don't like. There's very, very, very light faith content in this book. I wouldn't say this book, in this particular book anyway, I don't know about the other books, I would definitely count more clean than Christian, but there is some Christian stuff. There's a little bit, some mentions of God and praying. Her father is a reverend. Yeah, her father's a reverend anyway. And so stuff like that. She's a bookish character, so you get quite a bit of Austen and Bronte mentions in terms of some of the characters remind her of certain characters from those books. Yeah, it was funny. It was really cute. I love when she meets her little lizard, who, by the way, she named Francis after Francis Drake. You get a lot of really interesting history, actually. I can't remember if it was Francis Drake or someone else. But these... Oh, I know why it's not seen it. That's preview for the book too. Yeah, so there is mentions of actual historians from the past, from like the 1600s, who basically... There might be proof that dragons were actually real, which does not surprise me. Have you seen those dinosaurs? Have you seen the lizards? It's not that big of a stretch, people. But anyway, so there's an actual historian, I guess. I'm not quite sure if he's a historian, but researcher, something like that, called Edward Topsell. I've vaguely heard of him, I think. But basically he did research on like habits of dragons and stuff like that. So a lot of the historical content, including the sort of fantastical elements of the dragons, is actually based on actual research. So if you're interested in that, there's definitely mentions of the author and like a website where you can look at that author's research and stuff, or his books. So yeah, definitely intriguing. Definitely exciting. Love this book. There are definitely some funny bookish related things. as well. There's some just funny moments, there's some cool moments, exciting moments, there's mysteries, there's just, it's just really cool. I read this in 3 days. Technically 2, mostly, but 3 days. And for me, that's really good. It's a short book, guys. It's like less than 200 pages, not including the excerpt from book 2. Definitely going to read book 2. No one is surprised by that. You see, I keep starting series, and whether I finish any, I don't know. So those are the books I've read and finished in June. Let's quickly talk about what I used them for. Yearly readathons that I'm joining in with, that I've used these books for, as well as topical monthly readathons. So, let's dive in and figure that out. So, Chantel's Read a Bookshelf Challenge. June was a 5-word title or more. So I picked As Sure as the Dawn by Francine Rivers, 5 words. Then we have Christian Fiction Challenge by book nerd Kate Tree. And I think I used Fantasy for Wormwood Abbey, Christian Fiction. I think I used The Sure as the Dawn for historical. And I think that's it. Sorry, the sun again. Then we have the Jurassic Reading Challenge for June as Water. I didn't really get that one. I was going to use My Husband's Wife for that, so I might, when I read that this month, I might add it into my Jurassic Reading Challenge. Then reading the classics that Anne's doing from Research of Wonder. June, there was a book set in the USA. I didn't actually read any classics. I did read books set in the USA, but none of them were classics. Those of you who, all the American Revolution ones would count, So I didn't actually do anything for that because they don't really count. Let me know, Anne, if you think I can count them. Then we have Katie from Paperbacks and Ponytails, her Winnie the Pooh challenge. Did not complete any of the prompts for that one. Eventually I will. Then we have Alma and her Journey Through Time historical fiction challenge, and for June it was World War I or World War II. And I used The Librarians of Rue de Picardy by Janet Skesley and Charles, because this is partly set in World War I. Well, during World War I. Then I have Oceana's Read Christian Romance Challenge, and pretty obvious with a lot of them. I used As Sure as the Dawn for over 350 pages. And I think I used Wormwood Abbey by Christina Bayer for recommended, I think. I wanted to use Ariadne, but I couldn't really fit it in for anything because it's not a new release. It's a debut book by Christy, but it's not a new release. It's been out for too long for me to be able to use this. It's not a reread, and I don't think it's won any awards, and it's definitely not Jewel Pov or set during Christmas. So that was sad, but that's fine. Although it would count for recommended technically. So anyway. Then there was the Francine Rivers read along, and as you know, certainly those of you who are aware of it, As Sure as the Dawn was the June read, so I actually completed one, finally. We'll get there for that one. Then we have Cat Stories. It's her biblical reading and retelling challenge. I'm mainly reading books from the Bible. And June was letter, so I read one of the letters in the New Testament. What did I read? I think I read 1 Corinthians. Yeah, I read 1 Corinthians. And that was really convicting at times, guys. Not that that should be surprising with the Bible, but it was. I enjoyed it though. I read it all in one sitting, so that was cool. Okay, so that's all my yearly challenges. Let's do the monthly ones / summer ones, technically. So, for Chantel's Passport to Summer Reading Challenge, I did complete 1 book. And that was the titular June prompt in general for her Read Your Bookshelf challenge, and that was a 5-word title, so I used As Sure as the Dawn as well for that one. Obviously I am currently reading the Juliet Code, so I'm going to have to count that for July. But yeah, that was the only book I have actually completed in the Summer Reading Challenge. Then we have Lindsay and Sarah from Lindsay's Little Library and Sarah's Nightstand, their Roll Your Next Read Summer Reading Challenge. I haven't used any dice for that, but I'm pretty sure I have some that would count for the prompts that they've used. So yeah. So we have bookish, that's one of the prompts. I could use that one. I could use Wormwood Abbey. I could have used... yeah, just those, basically. Could use romance. There's romance in most of these. Rudy Picardi. Got As Sure as the Dawn. There's a little bit of romance in that. Ariadne and Legend of Fire Rose. There's romance in that. Art and music. There's definitely some art and music in Ariadne and Legend of Fire Rose because there's a couple of balls, so you get some like music and stuff in that. There's one that says name. There's a few names in this. Wormwood Abbey is one. Rudy Picardi, Ariadne, stuff like that. So I've done a few. I'm kind of being very relaxed, I guess. So there's that. Okay, for the actual monthly readathons, we have A Picnic in June, which is created, and the main host is Lucy from Lucy Chronicles, but we have her co-hosts, Jay or Jamie from The Canton Reader, Kay from Kay's Library, Jamie from Read Brucey, and Lindsay from Lindsay Lou Lemus. And I did not complete everything because, as you know, I have not completed my TBR. However, I will tell you which ones I did complete. I completed Jamie Gordy's chocolate prompt, which was a sweet read or about chocolate, like making chocolate, and I used the Librarian of Rudy Picardi for that because there's definitely some sweet moments with like the children and interacting with the children. There's some sweet moments with obviously a little bit of the romance. And also the friendships. There's some really sweet friendships between a lot of the women, especially in the past timeline. So I used that for that one. Then, and that was for the prep question, what are you eating? I wrote the wrong one on here, but that's the question. That's why it's food related, right? Yeah. Then we have what setting. And the prompt I went for was Lindsay's Cool Temperature prompt, and that was, I think, Chilling Read or something like that. And I used As Sure as the Dawn for that by Francine Rivers because there's definitely some chilling moments in this book, especially with the last third of it, with all of the spiritual warfare, as well as just some chilling moments as well, or like scary moments of what will happen sort of thing. So I definitely counted it for that, and I thought it probably would count. Then we have What Animals Did You See? And I used Kay's prompt Foxes, which is a character with red hair. Obviously I did not complete that in time, but I used the Juliet Code by Pepper Basham for that one. But I didn't complete it, so I'm not counting that one. Then I have What Book Did You Bring? And the prompt was Jay's, the Canton Reader's prompt, Dragon Fantasy. And then obviously I used Wormwood Abbey for that one by Christina Bayer. Then there was Where Else Are You Going? And that was Lucy from Lucy Chronicles. And her prompt was music. And that was like musical characters or music in the story, stuff like that. Musical elements. And initially I was using the Iliad by Homer. Did not get to that. I didn't think I would. But that was the one I picked. Because that obviously is, you know, epic poetry, musical type of thing. I thought it counted enough, but I didn't get to it, so it doesn't matter. Then we had the bonus birthday girl prompt, and that was to read a book by any of the co-hosts. whose birthdays are all in June, which is why it was created. And it was to read one of their 5-star reads. And so I picked Jamie from the Canton Readers selection of books, where Ariadne and the Legend of the Fire Rose by Christy A. Cole was one of the books that was one of her favourites, or 5 stars. So I picked that one, which, as you know, I did read. So yeah, I didn't completely finish the readathon, but I did really well compared to what I thought I would do. So the next one is the Red, White and June readathon, which is to celebrate the quincentennial, I hope I said that right, birthday of America. And this is, I think it was created by Shannon from Old American Spirit, but it's also hosted by, she also has co-hosts, and that's Kelly from Kelly Reads a Lot, Morgan from Morgan's Endless Bookshelf, Taylor from Tales with Tay, I think is her name now, if I'm remembering that correctly, Cheryl from Candlewick Library, Anne from In Search of Wonder, and Bethany from Bethany Brings Books. And I pretty much completed all of the prompts, pretty much, except Faith That Endures, because none of them were particularly Christian fiction. There are mentions, especially in the non-fiction, but I wouldn't quite say, I don't think there was enough of it for Faith That Endures, personally. But I did have some extras for that readathon. However, the main ones I used was fictional books set during the Revolution and a non-fiction about the American Revolution. So obviously those books included The First Salute, The Schoolmaster's Daughter, and in the end I used, what was the other one? I think it was just those two actually. I think I was actually able to do just both of them. Yeah, because I also mentioned how the Irish won the Revolution. Those 3 were the main books that I picked, and then that children's non-fiction by Captivating History was an add-on that I found on Kindle Unlimited, and that was really helpful. So the non-fiction, The First Salute, I mainly just did for non-fiction about the American Revolution. Then I used The Schoolmaster's Daughter by John Smolens for fictional books set in the Revolutionary era, and it also had most of the other prompts in it. It had secrets or spies, because there were secrets and spies, and loyalist or patriot, because obviously it had both of those. Quill and parchment, there were letters mentioned and also written out and actually read out in the book, as well as just mentioned, because there were deliveries of letters. And then Courage and Petticoat, because the main character was a woman, and she was also, being courageous. She was involved in the revolutionary stuff. So, yes, I have those. But none of them had Faith That Endures, so I didn't use that prompt. And then we have the Slice of Life readathon. This is hosted by Tiffany from Beach Bum Bookworm and Elizabeth from Lizzie Faye Loves Books. And this I was able to use with my current books, as the title suggests, Slice of Life. So I think in the end I was able to do all of the prompts, which is good. I think I might have done a bit of doubling up, but I can't remember. Anyway, so the prompt Morning Is Broken, the prompt was to either have dawn or morning in the title, or to have a diner or breakfast setting. And I used As Sure as the Dawn by Fancy Rivers for that, because the word dawn is in the title, and it also definitely has that Slice of Life vibes. Even though there were some more actiony moments, it was very much a slice of life that you go through, like before the travel, during the travel, and whilst they're at their destination. So you do get a lot of that slice of life sort of vibes, and it was a slower read because of that, so I counted that. 2 was Keeping House, and that was a book that had daily or cozy life, or like work or school involved. And again, I had a few that I could have used, but I can't remember which one I used I feel like I can't remember everything I used, so I will confirm in my editing. I think I might have used Librarians of Rue de Picardy for daily life, work, school. Maybe also, or instead for tea time, social events / tea party / tea shop, because there were social events in this book as well. So I'll let you know which one I used this for. I know I used it for at least one of those prompts. Then for homecoming, which is returning home visits, school, family reunion, it was probably a bit of a stretch, but I did use Wormwood Abbey for that one, because it does have a family reunion in it technically, even though they're estranged and none of them met each other. It's still a family reunion, if you know what I mean. So I'm going to count it. It might be a bit of a stretch, but you could say also count returning home for her dad, because her dad did grow up there until, he had to leave because of, estrangement. So yeah. And then for afternoon stroll, which was to include nature or outdoor activities, I did use the schoolmaster's daughter, because there was some nature / outdoor activities. There's a scene or two where the main character is doing some joining in with another character with fishing. So I counted that. Then we have Winding Down, and that was a book that had dates or movies or game night, stargazing, evening scenes, or has the word night in the title, like nighttime, not battle night. It was like nighttime, the time of day, or night. And I used it for evening scenes, and actually I think I used Wormwood Abbey for that one, actually. So yeah, but I will confirm it. Either I'll put a clip in, or I'll just write down what I actually used. We'll find out. But yes, that was actually all of my readathons that I've done. It's a very long video. There was a lot of books and a lot of talking. Yes, so thank you so much for watching. I mean, I'm not surprised it took me this long. There are technically 10 books of actual books that I have finished. I'm not including the Bible. I'm not really counting that. But yeah. And that is technically including this non-fiction, because I did technically finish it in June, even though I started it however long ago. So yeah, 10 books in total, which is a lot of books. So I'm quite impressed with that. The fact that I've actually only not finished about technically 3 books. Started 2, and the other one I have not started technically, although you could say I've read it before, the Iliad. But yes, I've done well reading 10 books, / mainly finishing 10 books in June, so I'm quite impressed with that. Most of it's because they were audiobooks, and then a couple of them were short. So yeah, thank you for watching. I have nothing else to tell you, basically. Yeah, let me know how you did in June. What did you read? And tell me your worst and best books of the month. My best book is basically pretty much all of my Christian fiction. So Ariadne and Wormwood Abbey. I will technically put As Sure as the Dawn, but mainly because of the last third of the book. But also, yeah, it was just those. I was wanting to count this Juliet Code. I've not finished it, so I can't. But I will count it for July. So yeah, I have quite a few favourites. I would say my least favourite is probably The Schoolmaster's Daughter. And I would say the adult non-fictions, The First Salute, and well, just that one. Yeah, How the Irish Won the Revolution was that more interesting to me than the last salute, First Salute. But depending on the non-fiction, it does vary. So, like, it's not necessarily bad, but I don't know. Anyway, look, to be honest, I've not had any really bad books. Because like the Schoolmaster's Daughter, I still gave it a 4-star, even though it's my lowest rating, but not lowest rating. It's like not really a favourite, but yeah. I'm definitely not necessarily put off with Rare, although if there's that much swearing, I am a little bit apprehensive. I'm normally okay with swearing, I can cope with it, even though I prefer not to have it, but if it's in a book, I can cope. But, you know, some of it is a bit excessive, you know? So, anyway, we'll see. But, yes, let me know how you did and what your favourite books were. And, yes, I hope you had a good June. Yeah, it's going to be another long one, guys. So, yay! Thank you for watching, though. God bless. Jesus love you. I love you. So win-win. And or certainly with the Jesus anyway. If you don't care if I love you, that's fine. I don't mind. But yeah, love you all. And I will see you all next time. Bye.